I felt like a hypocrite. I felt phony if I was to get on my knees, but I did it anyway. And something happened to me when I did that, and I was probably halfway through my 28-day stay. I think we got this. Welcome to the show. You can hear that Jay has his microphone working this week. It's awesome.
It does. It works.
We worked it up. Thanks, producer Vic. Yeah. Other than that, Jay, how's the week going?
Oh, it's a good, it's eventful. A wise man told me one time, he says, a good day is when everything goes my way. And a great day is when everything goes to absolute crap and I don't pick up a drink or a drug. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I've had a great week.
It hasn't been going your way, but it's going pretty good. It's going the way it's supposed
to. That's right. Yeah. There's no problem in the world that a good stiff drink can't make worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah. With this,
how about you, Joe? How's your week, buddy?
Oh, my week is great. Had a lot of real positive feedback on that first show we did, and just launching the second show with you today. And so we'll have more on that, but I'm really looking forward to, I was there when we taped the show, but I'm looking forward to hearing it. And Jay, your story is amazing. So I think we're going to get a lot of response from that. The whole idea is we want to get people to, to think in terms of recovery and think about getting well and to understand that there's another way of living. And we today I want to talk about treatment. It's kind of what we had on the schedule to as our topic of conversation, and the effects of treatment, kind of what it's all about. And we'll even hear from a couple of people that I've interviewed over the years who went through treatment, and we'll talk a little bit about their experience. Reggie, Leach, and Irene, Crowchild. So, so treatment. As somebody who's involved in the treatment world, tell us a little bit about it. What does treatment actually mean?
Well, treatment's the action, right? Treatment's the action, right? It's not a geographical place, right? Like the rehab is the place, the building is the place, the structure is the place, right? Treatment's the process, and I mean, there's just a lot of variables, right? There's a lot of variables that sort of in a lot of ways I can answer that. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you look up the word recovery, what does it mean? It actually means to recover that thing that's lost in your life, right? And what is that? And treatment is the process that allows me to go through to get to that place where I'm recovering that piece that's missing. One of the reality. Okay, I'll tell you personally. For me, I had gone to at one point I went through a detox, and I actually thought with my just outright ignorance to what treatment and the process of going to a rehab looked like I actually thought that in detox that I was in treatment, and I guess, it's funny. It's semantics, right? It's the word, right? I guess I was having some form of treatment. It was early treatment, right? It was it was dealing with the post-acute withdrawal, and it was dealing with the coming out of the delirium tremens and that sort of thing, right? But that's all part of this long process of recovery. And treatment is what we have in place in order to create and get us to that whatever that end goal is. It's very specific and tailored and unique to each person. And I'll be glad to go through that process with you when we get to it a little bit later. But what about you, Joe?
Well, as you mentioned, detox, being separated from drugs or alcohol for that period of time, so that we had the opportunity to change. And when I went away to treatment, it was just an opportunity to be separated from my DOC. And while that was happening, I'm getting some new ideas, right? Possibilities are being presented. And so I didn't know what to expect, obviously. I mean, one of the reasons I chose to go to treatment is because I was afraid of, I thought 28 days, I had no idea, just had no idea. I thought 28 days treatment, after that, perhaps I'm going to go back to being a person who's able to drink responsibly. Like I had no idea what the deal was. And then when I got into treatment, and I was told things like, well, really what we're doing is we're living without alcohol, drugs for one day at a time. And, but I was always stuck in the big picture. You tell me I can't drink again, and I've said this, I've used this story as an example when I was talking to some alumni. Are you saying I can't toast the bride at my daughter's wedding? Right. And that was, said, how old's your daughter? I said, she's 5. It's like, that's the insane thinking that I had. I'm looking at the big picture. I'm scared because I don't think, is it even possible to go a matter of months, let alone years? And so I didn't know what to expect. But you know what I found was I was introduced to 12-step recovery in treatment. We were bussed out to meetings, and we're reading the literature, and I saw that it worked, and I got some hope. And the hope was that maybe it could work for me. And so when I made a conscious effort to do the deal. I mean, when we were going to the meetings, I was sitting at the front of the room. I knew some of the guys who were hanging around the back telling jokes and stuff like that, and many of those guys aren't with us today. That's just a fact.
Right.
But I was able to relate to their stories, hear that they were just like me.
Right.
They couldn't go without alcohol for one day on their own, on their own, without something happening. And I was told, what? Why not try the God thing, right? Why not try some kind of power? And the literature tells us that power can be anything. And one of the things that the big book talks about is powers that you can't see. I wanted to see the power. Show me the power. If you're God, if you really exist, show yourself to me, right? And I believe that that's happened over the years many, many times, but not the way that I expected it to happen. And so what I saw was, I heard about, for example, the book talks about, a prosaic steel girder being made up of particles. I know that if you look through an electron microscope, you can see a whole bunch of stuff you wouldn't normally be able to see with the naked eye. Electricity was a power you couldn't see. When I was 5 years old, I stuck a bobby pin in an electrical outlet, and I get zapped. And I remember that the jolt to this day, it stays with me. I can remember it. And that was certainly a power greater than me that I couldn't see, that threw me across the room and could have killed me. And so, and then I was able to, get my head around that. Look, here's the wind. I see looking out the windows of the treatment center. I see the wind blowing the trees. I'm seeing the beauty of the trees. I'm seeing some beauty for the first time in a long time. And I'm thinking, there's something going on here. And so it was told to me that, why don't you try praying? Now, here's a guy who believes he's an atheist. He's truly an agnostic. Right. But in any case, I felt like a hypocrite. I felt phony if I was to get on my knees, but I did it anyway. And something happened to me when I did that. And I was probably halfway through my 28-day stay. I started getting on my knees, asking for help. Something happened to me. I started to feel better. And so by the time I left the treatment center, I was willing to do what it took, because I saw what was going on, and I did the things they told me to do. I got a group. Right. I got a sponsor. I went to meetings every day because I drank every day, and I was scared, shitless. And I remember when the sponsor they got, I went back to work, and that was really because I had my problems going home after work. I had that problem. I couldn't get home. I remember being at work and calling my sponsor and saying, I'm scared. I'm back at work, and now I got to go home. I don't know what to do. And my sponsor said, why don't you come over here? Just drive straight to my place. I'm here waiting for you. Put the coffee on. We're good. And I did that. And so that was my treatment experience, is being introduced to the program recovery, doing what they told me to do, and then locking in. I even started a meeting, with another fella from the treatment center. A couple of the inmates, we started the men's Friday afternoon meeting, and it was kind of based on what the meetings we had in the house, and it was it was good. It was really helped me to get organized. Some days where it's just me and him, and then one day another guy showed up, and it's kind of like Bill and Bob, and which was the name of the meeting, by the way. And the next guy who showed up was, he showed up, and we were actually leaving, and he showed up. Well, why don't we go have the meeting at breakfast? So we had the meeting at breakfast, but then gradually it just became a staple, and and it's still around.
I think
some 33 years.
I think what you're describing too is actually pretty commonplace as far as when we're talking about treatment, about what the aspect of what was missing, right? I mean, like, look, 6 people see a car accident, right? And they all have a completely different account of what they see. And the truth is none of them are lying, right? So that we go through life and we're taking snapshots, right? The brain takes 33% of information, stores it in the back of my brain there for a rainy day. And it sort of uses that information like a computer, like it filters through that stuff before it comes to anything that's happening current. And so when we go to treatment, we go in with these perceptions of what we think it's going to be. And then you mentioned a key component that you were willing to try something you'd never done before. And as a direct result, you got something you'd never had before, and that's an important piece. And another piece that you mentioned that you had the camaraderie with the gentleman, like, okay, so first of all, on a personal standpoint, I'm the product of 5 treatment centers, right? I don't always go into that. The reality is I'm what they call a slow learner. You know what I mean? Like I push back, right? And I tell myself I know stuff, and it prevents me from receiving information. As a matter of fact, in treatment, I can actually remember this. The counselors and the people working with me or for me or helping me, they'd be saying something at the front of a group, or we're having a one-on-one, and they're saying something, and in my head, right, I'm actually formulating what I'm going to say next. So therefore, I'm not hearing anything that they're saying, right? I'm not hearing it, but yet I'm telling myself all this stuff that I'm getting, all this information, and so I didn't find that part particularly helpful, but today in my center, we'll get back to that, because I know places like Addiction Rehab Toronto, places like Hope Valley Healing, and even Alpha House, right? I know that that we're building community, and of course we're not about putting casts on the broken arm. We're talking about learning how to stop falling out of that goddamn tree, and the underlying causes and conditions, and that's the stuff, of course, with intensive work you can do at all these beautiful rehab facilities in the province. But the community piece, that is the most natural piece, right? And I'll share about for those of you that don't know or do know the story about the rat park. There was when all the soldiers came back from Vietnam, there was a high spike and an influx of addiction, opioid, and it was rampant, right? And heroin specifically. And what ended up happening is, because all the soldiers came back at one time, communities across North America were like immediately the spike, the unhoused became more prominent. Domestic violence became a problem. Crime became a problem, and all these social challenges became really, really evident really quickly. And it was because it was so much at one time. That's when people of power take notice, and they task some money or some resources to try and solve these problems or challenges. And so it was actually a professor out of Canada. He was believe it was University of British Columbia, but it was definitely British Columbia. And he had built what they called the rat park. They did the rat park experiment. And so what they did was they studied these rats, and they had these enclosures, and they would put a rat inside the cage, and they put 2 water bottles. One was a sugar-laced water bottle, and one was a cocaine-laced water bottle. And they'd study the rat, and the rat would do what it would do. It would sip off the sugar-laced water bottle, but it would go over and repeatedly sip off the cocaine-laced water bottle in isolation over and over and over again. And the rat would overdose and die. And then they did this experiment over a period of time, and what they noticed was rat after rat after rat after rat after rat would actually die. And so they tried a variety of things, and at one point they built what was called the rat park. And so they put this massive enclosure, and they had different levels to it, and nets and slides, and they put multiple rats in the rat park, and they put the same 2 water bottles. And here's what was wild, Joe. is, yeah, sure, sometimes they would sip off the cocaine-laced water bottle, but invariably, time after time after time, they would go back over to the sugar-laced water, and they not only did these rats not overdose and die, these rats had like rat raves and made rat babies, and these rats thrived, man. And it was an interesting piece of, obviously there's a lot more components to the world treatment and the world of recovery, but community became an integral part of one of the missing pieces. Like, if you look at where we go with our addiction, where do we go? Garages, basements, we isolate. Bedrooms, whatever, bathrooms, we isolate. And, and then you put someone into a community, they have the opportunity to do a variety of things. One of them is to become vulnerable. One of them is to learn some social skills. One of them is to have accountability. One other, and these go on, right? And it became a big part of the recovery process during treatment, was literally the communal living component, right? When we have problems with if two guests, we don't use the term clients, if two guests are in our care and, they end up, they're not necessarily seeing eye to eye. Guess who's bunking together? Guess who's breaking bread together, right? We have to have these opportunities to have, practice skills that we're learning, but also build that community piece, that piece that allows us some humility and allows us to, practice healthy communication, allows us to practice, maybe admitting that, maybe accepting that we're wrong, or even if we're not wrong, having the wherewithal to be able to communicate that healthy in a productive, proactive manner, right? So, it's interesting that you brought all that up. You nailed it in one little, and I see that all the time, and that was my experience too, Joe. Was that community piece,
Yeah, and I've heard it said before that the opposite of addiction, it isn't sobriety; it's connection.
Right.
And it's learning that connection, and what you explained at your facility, and is we kind of help each other, learn to help each other out, learn to get along, learn like we do prop each other up in the recovery rooms and recovery settings that we do in any community where we care about each other. We help each other. We learn that we overcome our differences. We have to, we do that. That's brilliant. I just love it. Yeah. So So you mentioned you went to 5 treatment centers before you.
Okay, let me be clear. Let me be clear. I went to 5. I was walked off the property in 2. I left on my own accord on day 3 on the 3rd one. I finished the program twice. The truth is I remember. So I had gone to detox, thought it was treatment. I remember my first time going into treatment, Joe. I walked up to the front doors, and there was a gentleman there. I won't say his name, but his nickname started with the word NASCAR. And I walked to the front door, and I never forget. He asked me, he looked at me. I'm 117 pounds. I'm yellow. I'm beat up, man. And he says to me, hey kid, hey kid, what are you here for? And I remember like I was shaking in my boots, man. And I remember looking at him, I went, alcohol. And he puts his arm around me, starts walking me back out the door, says, we don't have none of that here. And I'm like, no, that's not what I mean. and I'm petrified, right? Because I'm like, oh my God, is this guy kicking me out before I even get in, right? At the end of the day, guys, I mean, everyone that's listening, like the reason why it's so there's so much fear associated with treatment is because it's the only time in our lives where we're told, it's truly time to get honest with yourself. And that's a daunting task to even imagine, right? Like, I don't know if I want to see what's under the hood, right? I don't know if I'm prepared for what I'm about to learn about myself. Sometimes, a lot of us, we find it even easier to just go on until the bitter end because the simple fact that, there's no fear associated. They talk about what self-sabotage is actually a semblance of control, right? If I'm sabotaging an opportunity at treatment, it's because I actually have got a sense of control back, right? Like if I'm starting a fight at treatment, or if I'm breaking the rules and they sign a therapeutic agreement, or what some centers call a behavioral agreement. And if I'm doing these types of things and I know what's going to happen as a direct result, then it's interesting because it's almost like I'm actually sort of controlling the outcome of this treatment, which I didn't have when I came in. It's it's the only illness in the world where we tell ourselves we're okay. So how do I tell myself I'm not okay and then sort of allow a stranger at that time or a friend I haven't met yet the opportunity inside my head and inside my heart to help me see things from a fresh perspective? I'm probably going to be rigid and resistant and push back and not really want to, participate. And so then what do? I blow it all up because it allows me some sense of control. It's pretty wild, man. Like, I don't know, Joe. I mean,
talking about, Jay, when you talk about, when you're in a meeting and you're early in treatment and you're imagining, you're thinking about what you're going to say, and you already have an idea of what they're talking about from your own perspective, and it's finding what really a true version of an open mind is really essential. I mean, as somebody who's going into treatment, I have to get rid of some old ideas, and if I'm not willing to do that, and it's scary, right?
It's also confusing, though. The internal,
right? So,
the internal motivation. Where's that coming from? Right? Where does that come from? Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know about you, man, but like, I could easily go to treatment for my wife. I could go to treatment for my parents. I can go to treatment for Joe. I can go to I can force we can do that. And I call that the 99%. So I'm 99% in, I'm 1% out. That 1% out is going to get me every damn time, right? I'm not locked in. And why? Because there's a part of me inside that's lacking that internal motivation. And that comes from a variety of things. Like, okay, so I've never met yet a person who was sitting around on a Friday night going, God damn, my life's so good, I'm going to go check into rehab for a month, right? Like everybody that comes in kicking or screaming at one way or another, even though, and there's a ton of denial patterns, right? The most common is flight into health, right? Day 3, all of a sudden they're feeling better, looking better, smelling better, and life is better, right? And now they're just going to skate through the next 30 days. And I often share with our guests, if you go through this process, 30, 45, 60, 90 days, and you come out the other side unscathed, right? If you come out the other side and you haven't had any challenges, you haven't had any emotional breakdowns, then what have you actually done? You tried to think your way through a thinking illness. For the first time in your life, you have to feel your way through this, and that's how you heal. That's scary. I don't want people don't want to refeel. I mean, you look at the respidey, it means to refeel. I don't want to refeel stuff. I know that for many of us too, it's like by the time we get to the doorstep of a treatment center, Joe, our stress receptors they're not depleted. They're absolutely decimated. Like they're done. Mm-hmm. And what happens without that stress receptors is that I can't manage my cortisol, and therefore my brain can't distinguish the difference between a paper cut and a full out trauma. I know the difference, Joe, between struggling with the Heinz ketchup lid bottle and Joe, you chopping off my hand with an axe. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I know the difference between those two things. Like my brain will in fact treat those two events the exact same way. Because there's nothing to manage that cortisol, that stress hormone. So I'm always heightened. And people in my life would say things like, why are you making a mountain out of a molehill? Why are you overreacting? Well, the fact is I'm reacting exactly as my brain's telling me to react at that time. And now I'm walking into treatment. I have no identity. I have no idea who I am. I'm full of fear. And now I don't like myself too much. I'm starting to, the shame and the guilt and the remorse of everything that's happened is now coming to the surface. I'm feeling that. I have no substances now to run to. I can't run from my problems. And here's something that I've learned that's very valuable, right? And I see this time and time again, and maybe you can identify with this, or maybe someone listening can, but okay, so that term, that line, you can't love someone else until you learn to love yourself. What a crock. What an absolute crock that line is. I could love the whole wide world and not love myself, and there lies the crux of my problem. The truth is, Joe, that line should be this. That line should be, I cannot be loved until I learn to love myself. You see, you'll never love me enough. You'll never text me enough. You'll never prove it. You'll never validate me enough. And even when you do everything I demand of you, the goalposts are going to move, and I'm going to demand more. Because deep down inside, I begin to get resentful against the people that are trying to love me. Because deep down inside, I don't love me, so how could you? And I keep demanding more from you so you can prove it and make me feel the way I demand that you make me feel, but I'm incapable of feeling that way. I come into treatment and all of a sudden I have this opportunity to let all that down and allow the process of healing to unveil, learn who I am, right? Do some deep underground work with my therapist, do some, attend 2, 3, 4 psychoeducation sessions a day, social education in the evening, get introduced to 12-step, have community, right? Have new opportunities that I've never had before. All these little light bulbs start to go off and I can slowly start to unravel that missing piece of how to begin the process of liking myself and forgiving myself. And once we get there, then we can start looking at how do we get to the bigger, love is an action, right? So if I'm going to love myself, it means I'm choosing to do it. But how do I get that internal motivation to want to do something over and over again, right?
Yeah, to take that a little deeper for me, like my experience is like it comes down to the fear of abandonment for me, because ultimately I believe that I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, and if you truly know what I am all about, it's not going to be enough for you. You're going to leave me. Everybody's going to leave me. I'm going to be alone. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And that was a feeling that I had. As a 5, 6-year-old boy, somehow developed that idea for whatever reason, and for in recovery, I get to change that, right? And I get to have a different perspective. But when you were talking about having an open mind and changing our way of thinking, and yet we actually have physical problems, like you talked about the cortisol. You have actual physical issues that we need to deal with, but we have mental and physical issues. So I don't know if it was Einstein or Pascal, but somebody said something along the lines of, how can you fix a sick mind with the same mind that created the sickness?
Right.
When I'm in my sickness, I can't possibly get out of it. I can't possibly see that because I keep thinking I'm going to think my way into it. Into recovery. I'm going to think my way into stopping drinking. I'm going to think my way into this. I'm going to be better tomorrow. I'm going to think it. And all I need is a little more confidence. I'm going to have a little more self-confidence. People are going to love me more. I'm going to love anyone who has this self-confidence. But they can't hang on to that self-confidence. It's impossible. So I have to learn how to take what I got here and be okay with what I got here. And that's what this process is about, right? And that's what recovery is about. Yeah. I know we both of us are very familiar with 12-step recovery. Are there other forms of recovery that are beneficial
My center's all evidence-based, man. Like we have an introduction to 12-step, but and then there's a lot of there's a lot of fantastic modalities around and and I can speak for obviously for a few of them, but we like to be able to give everybody an opportunity to truly build what's called an individual treatment plan, right? I've been through a lot. I've had the fortunate experience of going through a bunch of centers, and I've also been a counselor and at leadership levels at a ton around the province as well. And we've kind of built one that was based on all of the gaps, right? We kind of filled in the gaps, and let's build the center around that. And of course, most centers always land on the same. There's the evidence-based model with cognitive behavioral therapy and DBT. It's all about changing the way that I think in order to ultimately change how I feel, which ultimately changes my behavior. And that's something that we do sort of like, that's all about the repetition and the schedule and the program, the process. And so, here's the thing, right? So check this out. You have it takes 21 to 45 days to rebuild, new healthy neural pathways. And that requires consistency and discipline and the self-motivation to do it. And, and that's where treatment centers come in, right? They allow that person to have that space to go through this process, and to practice these things and to sort of help hold them accountable and to help them realign when they're sort of pivoting out, pushing the door that says pull, if you will. So I'll give you an example. Like anyone that's listening tonight, right? I'll challenge you or today or whenever you're listening to this, I'll challenge you, right? If you brush your teeth with your right hand every day, or you brush your teeth with your left hand every day, I want you for the next 7 days to brush your teeth with the other hand. Now it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to not make a whole lot of sense. You're not going to understand the value. You're going to say, what's the purpose? But I challenge you to do it anyway. Now that's sort of where the mindset is of an individual coming in treatment. It's like, well, I don't get it. Well, it's okay. You don't have to. You just have to trust this process. And so that's cognitive behavioral therapy when we start training your thinking process. And I want you to try that for 7 days. Now check this out. it's not that you're going to get better at it in 7 days. What I want you to understand is that the biggest challenge isn't going to be brushing your teeth with your offhand. Your biggest challenge is going to be remembering to do it, right? So most people that are going to do it, by day 3, they'll just pick up their toothbrush because they have what's called automatic response, and they'll start brushing like they normally do. And you might catch on right away and go, oh yeah, that's right. And go to your left hand. But by then you've already, that neural pathway's already created that new, footprint in the snow, if you will. Right. And so we start doing these things with repetition, becomes an automatic response system. And that's where treatment with CBT is really effective, is you start to, realign people's, thought processes and their feelings and their behaviors. Now that's great, man, because treatment centers, they will get you clean and sober. They will get you on the path to mental health wellness. They will. All of them will, but here's the deal. They won't keep you clean and sober, and they won't keep you on the path, right? That's your job, And so, treatment centers are like the big stretch and the sprint at the beginning of the race, right? The rest of it's your life, And I think if you're like me, and basically you are, Joe, because you said it earlier, that, you were thinking about, how am I not going to drink for the rest of my life? Well, at the end of the day, at the end of every day, right? I have to remember that it's always going to be one foot in front of the other, and that if I'm looking for some sort of finish line in this thing, then I'm missing the point, right? Like if I have a doctor says to me today, Jay, you have diabetes, you gotta check your insulin level every night, and you have to don't put pineapple on your pizza, right? I don't even know if people really do that anymore. That's disgusting. But let's say they do. But let's say they do. The doctor tells me that. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm diagnosed because of my symptomology. I'm diagnosed with diabetes. So the doctor says this, and I'm going to do this. Guess what? Because if I don't, something terrible could happen, tragic potentially. Right now, I'm diagnosed now as because thanks to the DSM-5, and we know that addiction is an illness. I'm diagnosed as an addict or an alcoholic, or I have anxiety or depression or OCD or post-traumatic stress disorder, whatever it is that I'm here to work on. Right, and the professional tells me this is what you have to do after you leave treatment: X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z. Right now, because it's a thinking illness, my brain's going to go like this. Well, maybe I could do some of that, but I don't need to do as much of that as they said, and maybe I'll just do some of this, right? Like I'll determine with my thinking what's going to be best for my thinking process, right? and the reality is I have to throw that thought process to the wind, right? I have to go into this with complete abandon, that I'm ready to, take some direction, not just from the 12-step community, from therapists, from professionals who generally know that this is not a quick fix, right? This isn't a quick fix. You got to go through the process over and over again, and you're gonna not treatment, the consistency of the disciplines involved with recovery, consistently, right? Hey, Joe, when you were in trouble in school, because you got in trouble, when you were in trouble in school, do you remember your teacher would have you write lines on the chalkboard or write lines on the paper, be like, I will not punch Bobby in the melon. I will not punch Bobby in the melon, over and over again. Right. That's primitive, right? I mean, it's a very elementary, but it's actually like, it kind of describes what the thought process is of cognitive behavior therapy. If I'm going to do something over and over again, the goal is to believe myself so that I can start behaving in such a way. So the goal is, if I write that out 100 times on a piece of paper, I will not go out at recess and punch Bobby in the melon, right? And that's supposedly and that's kind of like, just to really simplify it and dumb it down a little bit, that's kind of the process, right? Is we want to get people, the treatment centers that are working on the evidence-based model want to get people to start practicing new thought processes in order to have a whole new set of feelings about them, and then ultimately their behavior changes. But there's a ton. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm long-winded, brother. What do they say? The average person speaks 7,000 words a day. I do that before breakfast. So.
No, I was just I wanted you to finish that thought, but I if you can maybe add it, but you talked about following direction. We get directions, it's like the recipe, the cake recipe. You go to your friend's house, he makes a spectacular chocolate cake. You ask him how you make the chocolate cake. He gives you the recipe. It's exactly, you follow the recipe exactly as he gives it to you. You're going to have great chocolate cake. And so, what happens is you start making the cake and you decide, well, instead of 2 eggs, there should be 3, maybe a cup and a half of flour. Let's just put a cup of flour in. I know it's he asked for, like two packages of the Hershey's chocolate. Let's put in 3. And you make this cake and it comes out of the oven and decorate and everything else. And you invite people to have it and it tastes like crap because you haven't followed the recipe, and the recipe's what works. So it's like if we follow our own recipe in terms of recovery, that's based on mild insane thinking, what's going to happen? How has my way ever worked in the past? And it hasn't. I mean, I've got years and years of evidence to show that my way doesn't work, but there's another way that does. And I'm looking and meeting these people that tell me this. So why not just do what they say? Easier said than done. But I just wanted to say, first of all, I want to mention our sponsors because they're awesome. Hope Valley Healing Center. Healing begins with hope. Addiction Rehab Toronto, saving lives and reuniting families. Alpha House, where recovery is possible and people rebuild their lives. And Matt Apparel, wear the message, make a difference. We mentioned at the top of the show, we have a couple examples of people that I talked to in my other show and their experience with treatment. And I wanted to share some of that because I think it might be pertinent. We can maybe comment about some of this afterwards. But Reggie Leach, one of the true great snipers in NHL history, once scored 61 goals in a season and 19 goals in one postseason. That's 80 goals in a season. He won the Conn Smythe Trophy and the Stanley Cup. Reggie talks about hitting bottom and then making his way to treatment.
I actually got sick. And I end up in the hospital, and the friend of mine, Dr. Carlina, was my doctor at the time. He said, Reg, you have 2 choices. You can either die or you can live. And I said, well, he says, do you want help? I says, yes, I need, I can get you help if you want help. He says, you think about it, and I'll be back Monday morning. This happened Sunday morning. He comes back Monday morning, looks at me, he says, what do you think, Reg? I says, okay, I want help. I want to go in rehab. He says, don't just say it for you to get out of here. You got to mean it. And that was the first time I thought about it. I said, well, other time I tried to do stuff before, when I made up my mind to do something, I could do anything in the world. I always tell the kids that don't let anybody tell you you can't do something unless, because you can make up your mind, use your heart and follow it. And when I went to rehab, I went in there for, I believe it was 7 weeks. And when I came back out, boy, what a life-changing thing that was, Joe. I went in there. I remember going in there, and they made me fill out this form. So me being a alcoholic and being a con artist, I put down everything I thought they would want to hear. Mm-hmm. So, and then at the end of it, they gave me the same questions. It was like night and day. It was completely different. But I went in there for a reason. I had a lot of friends that came in to visit me. A lot of the alumni guys came in to visit me at the time, and I really worked at it. And I got myself under control. And that was in October. I got out. I went in September 6th, 1985.
He's been able to stay sober since that day. Now it's 41 years, right? Beacon of hope for the Indigenous community. Really such an amazing man. And, we talked about that. It doesn't matter how you get, where you're at when you get in there. Like, he comes in as a con man and as an alcoholic, and, he's going to answer those questions exactly what they want to hear. But by the time you leave, you got a different attitude. And isn't that what we want to do in terms of as a counselor, as somebody in a rehab facility, somebody working with others? We want to see some kind of change happen. Doesn't matter how you come in. Doesn't matter what the reasons are. Just is if you can you change that way of thinking?
Yeah. And be present to allow it to happen. Like, that was amazing. Like it's so eye-opening, right? To have that kind of, like, so 61 goals and all the accolades in the world, right? And then it's like, nothing external is ever going to be enough, right? And until I get to root causes and conditions. That's pretty impressive. He's a really admirable and inspiring man. Wow.
The second clip I want to run is another member of the Indigenous community. She's the first Indigenous woman to win the Canadian Long Drive Championship. She did it twice. Irene Crowchild She's competed internationally at the World Championships. She's known for driving the ball over 300 yards. I can only dream about that. Irene is really affected by intergenerational residential school trauma, and she talks about her rehab experience.
I think it was week 2 or 3 that it was the first time that I was able to look in the mirror and to be proud of who I am. And that was just such a big breakthrough for myself, because I was just I think you could relate too, just filled with a lot of self-hate, shame, embarrassment, super, super weak. And it was nice to feel to be proud of myself. It's been how many years? And, it's just a big snowball effect. Just things kept on getting better. I kept on getting better. Just things kept on getting better. I kept on getting better.
Yeah. She talked about shame, and she talked about, weakness. And that's kind of what we make a judgment against ourselves about that's what it is, right? And blame and shame and, all the horrible feelings we get. But something happens to change. Is her experience, would you say, typical?
It's normal, right? I mean, by the time someone lands on the steps of a treatment center or a rehab center, they're filled with all kinds of self-loathing and different narratives and stories they've told themselves, right? I mean, I did. And everyone that I meet does, right? They're they can't believe what they've done. You said at the beginning of the story, you used the term DOC, right? You used the term DOC, which for anyone that's listening, that stands typically for drug of choice. And I think really it should be changed to, drug of no choice, the DONC, right? I don't have a choice because of the way I felt what was just described, right? The self-loathing, the shame, the embarrassment, the guilt, right? I didn't have any choice. I couldn't sit with that. I can't sit with that. I had to numb or escape or run or pretend, whatever it was. I had to get away, and I think that's I know it's very typical, right? And we see it, and once we start looking under the hood a little bit, typically it's the same response. It's I can't believe I did that. Well, we had lost the power of choice. Okay. So for those of you that don't know, and I promise I'll try and keep this as short-winded, but the addiction component is progressive, right? And so what happens is that it works its way up your spinal column, through your brainstem, into your amygdala in the center of your head, and it works its way through over the course of time. Keep drinking, keep drugging, keep shooting up, whatever it is, behaving with a certain way, and it works its way through my prefrontal cortex into a little place about 1/4 of an inch down from my crown of my head in the reward system. It's the motivational pathway, right? And so, guess what else lives there? My survival drive, right? My survival drive. So it's I know I'm not going to die if I don't get high, or I know I'm not going to die if I don't drink. My brain doesn't know that. My brain's telling me that I need to drink or drug to survive. And that tug of war, right, between right and wrong, and guilt and shame, and what my brain's saying, you need this or you're going to die. I don't know it consciously. I'm not, we're not most people are out there that are using out there today. They're not sitting there, saying to themselves, well, if I don't use, I'm going to die. As a matter of fact, it's the complete opposite. There's a chance that I will die if I do use, right? And, but that piece is the part that doesn't get really discussed a bit. That's the piece that can help us start to learn a little bit more about addiction. So it allows us the ability to not necessarily carry around that guilt and shame so much, But with intergenerational trauma, it's really tricky because we have to work backwards through all the trauma, right? That's the same process for PTSD, for EMS workers, 911 operators, fire, police, veterans, emergency room, nursing, all this. It's very important that when we're looking at, dealing with any sort of trauma, that it's it's very, very the process is created very uniquely to the person's individual challenge, because we could do a lot more damage than good, by not being very, very mindful about the process and being aware of what that person's goal is, right? But intergenerational trauma, I mean, that's we have the ability, the human brain is remarkable. Like, we have the ability to stop that cycle, create healthy thoughts, create healthy behaviors, not like well-adjusted, adapted behaviors, and and then carry that on through the next, through our children's generation, right? We can be that catalyst for change. We have the ability today to, thanks to science and process and understanding, we can actually create tangible change for the future for our families. And of course their families and, community and everyone that's associated with that. And, it's really amazing. It's really amazing. You got that clip too. That's good.
Yeah.
When was that? When did you guys record that?
I had, I think 2 years ago we had Reggie on the show, and maybe a few months later we had Irene on the show, and yeah, just a wonderful guest. Like, loved it. Yeah. And yeah,
no
it's blessed to be able to have them on the show for sure. And they're both incredible people, and they're both still really involved in the Indigenous community and positive role models. And Reggie goes to dance performances and is part of that, and they're both involved at a leadership level in the Indigenous community, and it's so beautiful. And
this is so amazing.
Yeah. It's like
I do want to say.
Go ahead. Yeah. No.
Okay. So for those of you that don't know, when we mentioned intergenerational trauma, it's like a lot. So Dr. Gabor Mate talks, although one of the world's most renowned addictions specialists, he actually, although controversial as well, but he actually shares that all addiction is rooted in early adverse childhood trauma. But the intergenerational trauma piece is basically just to sum it up. It's like our grandfather's grandfather, right? It was involved with something that very dramatic and traumatic, and it changed neurochemistry. And then of course through biology, that carries on through, the family unit. And there was and I'm going to butcher this. I'm going to completely butcher it because I'm not fully versed in the facts, but there was an experiment done years ago. I can't remember the details now. It's drawn a blank, but it was the cherry blossoms and an electrified grate. And they put, and please don't leave comments like I created this. I did nothing. I'm just sharing the information, but they put these rats on these electrified grates, and they had this vacuum where they would send in the cherry blossom. So I guess what would happen is the rat would go in on the cage, they'd press a button, it would electrify the cage, and it would shoot the cherry blossom scent into the cage. And of course, the rat would be jumping because he's getting electrocuted. I know it's terrible. It's very terrible, but that was the experiment of the day. And then they would do this with multiple rats, and then they would put the rats in with female rats or vice versa. And then they would make baby rats, and they would take the babies, remove them from the parents, and they would put them in a cage without the electrical grid. But they would put them in a cage, and they would shoot the cherry blossom scent in. And what they discovered was the rats would be jumping as if they were getting electrocuted, but there's no electrocution coming on. And so that scent alone was enough to, allow to give them the trauma response to something that their family, their mother or father had gone through. And there was no actual experience that was directly correlated. And that's where they started to study, I believe that's where they started to really look at intergenerational trauma and make sense of it a bit. Of course, there's probably a gazillion studies since, and, that might have even been debunked by now, but that was an interesting piece. Yeah,
it
does explain a lot.
Right.
Too.
I mean, it does explain. Yeah. But there's so much. I mean, but even however it's passed on, if it's passed on because of emotional damage from, my grandfather or whatever, and however it's passed on, it's still intergenerational, and it's still, the fact is that we get a chance to break those cycles. And you touched on that earlier. I want to talk about something before we wrap this up. Some of the keys that living in having recovered from that hopeless state of mind and body, and experiencing the joys that we get to have as a result of our new way of life. And I know that I remember having like extreme belly laughs with my family in sobriety, and just enjoying that kind of a kind of life that I never even could have imagined. Part of it is because I can't imagine not having to be in control. I can't imagine not being consumed with so much, being consumed with self that I can't enjoy the moment. But that's part of it, right? The fact that I can just not be consumed by self. I can just be in the moment now. I can just enjoy my life as it unfolds. And that's a big difference, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember belly laughing too, man. I had my first belly laugh ever. It was in treatment. And I remember I was laughing, and I laughed so hard that my stomach hurt and tears were coming down my eyes. And I remember thinking, oh man, this is beautiful. I remember I wanted more of that. That was my new drug. I think natural joy. I see it all the time.
Yeah.
See it all the time, right? The guests, they just you see it, and then you see both sides, right? But it's it's fun. It's fun.
Hey, gentlemen, I just wanted to jump in for a quick second.
Hey, Producer Vic.
Jay, if someone is watching and wondering, how do I become a guest at Hope Valley? What do I have to do? And is it free, or how do I pay for that? Does OHIP cover it, or my insurance, or is it out of pocket?
So listen, all the different centers around the province do amazing things, and they do it for different, they have different, different things, right? I mean, there's completely OHIP funded centers, which unfortunately the offerings are limited, but they, there's wait lists, but it's covered, right? There's no funds involved, and then there's private sector where it costs money, but you're getting you're paying for the offerings, you're paying for the doctors, the psychiatry, the master level therapy, all this. Our model specifically is a bit of a hybrid, right? We have, our fee for service beds subsidizes compassion care beds, but just like the OHIP model, that means we now have a wait list, right? And, so there's strengths and shortcomings. The reality is across the province, across the country, the government, in our opinion, doesn't fund addiction and mental health treatment the way it should. There's a lot of red tape and a lot of, different things that are preventing people from getting the help that they need and deserve. When they ask for it, it needs to be readily available, and it's not. And with us, in order to get the help in our care, right, the process is very similar. I'm sure it'll be the same with a lot of the centers that you reach out. You talk to admissions team. With us, you talk to our compassionate care team, right, and they'll do a pre-admission call, and then usually within about an hour of that, they're on the phone with our CD doing a pre-screener, and we will go through the process of learning everything we can about them, completing a full biopsychosocial, and then of course making the arrangements with them and their family to get them, either whether there's detox involved or there's all the different variables that come with that. And then of course, then we book the bed. In a lot of cases, it could be a few days. In some cases, it's a few weeks, right? And it depends on the case. And I think that's probably pretty standard across the board. The difference is in each center, I'm sure we all have unique strengths, and we all probably have our own shortcomings, right? And with us, we know that the biggest barrier in treatment and the biggest barrier to getting help is being in a geographical space that allows you to feel safe enough to recover, right? And so we created an environment here where there's two pieces to it, and we see it all, especially with our human trafficking survivors that come through. I mean, the first thing they say is, "I feel safe here," right? And you see their shoulders drop. Mm-hmm. I had a guest a few weeks ago actually come down the stairs, and I was walking through the intake area, and she says she's got tears in her eyes, and I'll never forget this as long as I live, because I knew her from a previous treatment center, and she'd been through. She's been through it, and she says, she had tears in her eyes. She goes, you won't believe it. I said, what's that? She goes, I unpacked. And although that may sound trivial to you or anyone else that's listening, you know, this is an individual who hadn't unpacked her bags in 13 years because she never felt safe enough to do so. You know, and so to watch the shoulders come down and that. So we create an environment that feels like home. It's safe. We're in the middle of the woods, you know, 10 acres of tranquility and covered bridges and ponds. And we're in a big old hand-built man-made log cabin, right? It's pretty exceptional, but there's strengths in all the centers, right? Every center in the province brings so much to the table. And at the end of the day, none of us in this field are in competition. We're all working together collaboratively to try and find common solutions to help these individuals find and access the care that they all deserve. And it's here, man. It's here, right? It's usually the individual that's rigid and resistant, right? But when we talk about, like, when the individual says, I need help, we need to be able to help them, because that window of opportunity may be very small. And the reality is, like, if I don't have a bed, I'm going to send them to Art, right? I'm going to send them to Eric over there. I'm going to send them to, when they're finishing our care, they're going to Alpha House. I mean, I'm pushing it, like, because I want them to have the full opportunity to succeed, right? And Alpha House does exceptional work with the male identifying populations after they leave recovery, right? And so, or the treatment process, right? And so there's just a lot, like, but that's what it starts with. It starts with the hardest part. Picking up the phone, that 1,000-pound phone call and trying to, don't let fear be the barrier from that really awful and scary 4-letter word, help. They have to ask for the help. And once they ask for it, then we can do what we do best, which is love them until they learn to love themselves, right?
Yeah. Let the miracle happen.
Yeah, baby.
Miracle happen. And so next week we're going to talk about gambling addiction. And so tune in for that one. Love this, Jay. Another great show.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. And this is awesome.
That was fun, man. I hope I said something that was helpful. And it was an absolute privilege and a pleasure to be here, Joe.
Yeah.
I want to meet Reggie Leach.
All right.
I want to meet Reggie Leach.
Yeah.
So you need to make that happen for me.
All right.
I'm amazed by that, man. I forgot we were even recording when I was watching that. I was like, I wanted him to keep talking. Yeah. But anyways, everybody, thank you. Have a great week.
Yeah. All right. See you next week.
We'd love to hear your feedback, comments, and suggestions on topics for future shows. Please DM us on this feed.
Addiction Rehab Toronto. Toronto's #1 alcohol and drug treatment centre, saving lives, reuniting families. The only treatment centre in the province to offer medical detox, treatment, sober living, and lifetime aftercare, all in one place. Our unique and specialised programs are designed to equip our clients with the tools to successfully lead a life of dignity, respect, and purpose. Let us help save your life or your loved one's life. Call today for more information or to facilitate an intervention 1-855-787-2424 or visit addictionrehabtoronto.ca.
Every moment I step on the grounds of Hope Valley Healing Center, there's this immense sense of beautiful energy, and it just hits you when you walk on these grounds, and it's something that you almost have to experience here to really know what our clients and our staff and myself are speaking about.
We believe that healing begins with hope, and here at Hope Valley, hope is truly everywhere. Healing doesn't come easy, but it comes with a choice. You get to make that choice today. You'll regain that power of choice today. You'll find healing here. You'll find hope here. And if you believe it and you're willing, well, let me show you how that happens. Let me show you how we can make this happen together.
Since 1972, Alpha House Recovery Community has been a cornerstone of hope in Toronto. Serving self-identified men 18 and over, our 4-month residential program bridges treatment and long-term recovery. With 24/7 support, counseling, life skills training, and real-world reintegration through work and education. We also offer safe, stable transitional housing to help graduates build independence. With a 71.4% success rate 2 years post-treatment, Alpha House empowers lasting recovery. Alpha House, where community builds a stronger future.
At Mad Apparel, founded by Mark and Dale, we believe in a life of impact. Make a difference isn't just our mantra. It's a call to elevate every part of your life. Your health, your goals, your family, your community. Rooted in service, powered by resilience, we champion those who lead by action. Mad Apparel. Empower your journey, impact the world, make a difference.